at which conversations happen today and the impact that they have on brands is exactly what we are here to discuss. So, the impact of a tweet or the impact of a small social media post or anything that goes viral on the internet today has a direct impact on brand reputation. And to that mix, we've had a new guest in town join us. It's called AI. While AI is doing all these lovely, crazy things, it's also impacting the way brands are perceived. There is a fair bit of misinformation. There are deep fakes. There are fakes of all kinds, whether it's reviews or it's anything that is related to brands. There are, like in any format which is in the public domain, there are good actors and there are bad actors. So in such an environment, how do brands navigate the way forward? Mehak, I'd like to start with you. What do you think brands can really do in a situation where a single tweet or an Instagram post can really sort of become a national headline within a few hours?
Thank you so much. And I think a very, very interesting topic. We've had a couple of discussions relating to this. I think I want to start and set the context first with the fact that not every backlash has to do with a disgruntled consumer or someone who's not happy, right? A backlash can happen for any reason. And I think we've seen many, many examples here. I was following a case study for Zomato very closely, where they had come up with an option that you can actually filter for Jain food, right? And that's just basis personalization. It could be your choice. It could be a dietary preference, right? But there was a social backlash everywhere on the internet where people said that they are dividing food by religion. I won't say that would be, of course, the brand's fault, but just a perspective to share here. But let's also take the other side, Lovina, to your question, that let's say a backlash does happen from a brand's point of view, and I'm working with ASUS right now. I'd like to put in a picture here that the social sentiment is always one-sided. So there is a certain narrative that starts, and that starts floating. I think as brands, what we need to do and what we are doing is consumer marketing lingo not obviously is at the center of everything we do, right? We work back end to figure out what the problem is. We have a lot of social listening tools, and we understand what the issue is, rather than jumping in terms of a public forum debate and responding there. I think that's not the most ideal thing to go about it. I think one of my most important parts, which I have seen and learned here, is that consumer lifetime value plays the most important role in a case like this, which basically means that front end is great. We have awareness campaigns. We go all out talking to consumers, right? But the back end of it is prospects, consumers who actually are absolutely loyal to you. And they are the ones who come to actually neutralize the sentiment when a backlash like that happens. So we have to ensure that our advocates play a much bigger role actually in the whole ecosystem, because they are the ones who actually come in, they neutralize the sentiment, and they can also give a perspective about whatever the backlash might be. So I feel like that's a very important part of the tale, and those are some things that we look at from an organizational perspective.
What are your thoughts on the same, Apeksha?
Could you repeat the question?
We're generally discussing about how anything which happens on the internet today is damaging brand reputation. So how are brands navigating this challenge today?
Yeah, I think anything that happens on social media, everything doesn't deserve a reaction. So brands, while reacting to any kind of post that's going viral, etc., we must think before we act, because the brands, like she mentioned, then the responses that we give, those make news headlines. So brands should be careful while they navigate this path and not jump onto reacting to any kind of messaging that's going on.
I think we've got to go back to basics that we've all learned, right? It is respond and not react. That's the first thing that we want to do when we see something really flaring up on social media. Let's just quickly see what we can do about it. But the beauty of the thing is that social media is a monster that loves to eat its own children, right? Because as soon as something kind of flares up, something else bigger would happen. Today there's an earthquake that has happened, but tomorrow if Shubman Gill scores a century, that'll take over that news cycle. Earlier, the news cycles were much longer when you had newspapers, but now they can be a few minutes also. So I think you've got to really take a deep breath and see what you really need to do before jumping in and trying to spark something. You know, the new in the news is still very valid in this whole ecosystem. If you don't feed the monster with new stuff, it's not going to come up with new things. So let it die its own death, let it eat its own children. Hopefully it will die down, and you might not have to do anything about it too.
Also, I feel, building up a brand perception in a very strategic way is very important, because when you have already done it and, put an effort to sustain it, so even something goes wrong, okay, the backlash will happen. You can't expect everything people to talk positive about something which has gone wrong. But the brand image doesn't get tarnished, because you know that this is a credible brand. They have a credibility in the market. They maybe work for a cause. Their brands are for cause. So building up that community around in a very strategic and sustainable way, that acts in a very positive way when there is a crisis for them. Of course, experts like us, let's call us experts, we know how to handle the crisis.
Apeksha, I wanted to ask you, since you are associated with Policy Bazaar, products that pretty much everyone in any part of the country sort of needs. In such situations, given the digital deluge that we have, how are you managing the challenge with regard to regions and cultures specifically?
Absolutely. Before I answer this question, I would like to say that, the previous panel discussed it fantastically as to how one size, doesn't fit for all. So having said that, I would like to say that brands today, if they want to thrive, you have to be in tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, whatever you may call. If you are not there, metros, just doing great in metros doesn't solve the purpose. Also, like you mentioned about Policy Bazaar, we are serving throughout Bharat, right? And if you don't cater to these tiers, then Bharat can't grow. So, for example, Policy Bazaar, we serve in 15 languages, right? And the way we approach, say, a customer in Odisha, the state I'm from, is very different from how we might approach a customer in the south. How a customer is approached in the north, say Punjab, will be again very different. So, as India is very diverse, we make sure that our reach is at a community level, the messaging is straight, which matches to the way people think at that community level. And I think when you're reaching out to tier 2, tier 3, it is very important to make sure that the regional voices in those states and those cities, you make sure that, you have the people hear them, because they are very influenced by those voices. So absolutely, if you want Bharat to grow, you will have to strategize very differently for all regions in the country. It cannot be a one size fits all. So yeah.
I think that was a
Also
very valid
depends on
one. From voices, one of the things that comes out is that today how we are moving from broadcasting specs to identity-driven messaging. I think all of us are focusing on that, right? So, you talk about tier 2, you talk about tier 3, and of course, the previous panel also talked about the fact that it's how are we empowering their journey by the end of it, right? How are we, if I am talking about ASUS as a brand, how am I reaching out to a young professional, a creator, a gamer? But the aspect that I want to touch across is what is the kind of the aspiration that that person has, and that could be irrespective of the market, right? So how do we sort of reach out to that element? I think that's very crucial, which also anchors the larger vision that we need to shape how they are thinking. We don't have to push out our specs, but more in terms of what they think is how we need to match our broader marketing objectives, is what I'd say.
It also depends on the products, I feel, Moulika. What is the product of your company? So accordingly, you have to reach out to the mass. A very high-end car definitely won't work out for the 3-tier cities where the infrastructure itself is lacking. So that also depends. So it has to be customized. One thing is for sure that people have become digitally active now. So they know what are the things going on. But then again, as per the products, that customization is very important to reach out to the sentiment of the consumers, because after all, it is your company, customer or consumer, and the competitor. So this triangle has to be played very, very meticulously and in a very strategic way.
Great points, everyone. Geetaj, I wanted to come to you, since you were working with Vivo, hand phones and pretty much the whole country, is your market. You do work with influencers, I'm guessing, whether they're micro-influencers or large-scale, like big ones or whatever. And of course, then there is user-generated content, which practically everyone is churning out at their own level. What sort of impact have you seen of these two elements on your brand?
I think when you are working, especially, we work with a lot of influencers when we are launching new products predominantly. So we are looking at two different aspects of it. The first aspect is awareness, and second is trust and preference. So when I'm looking at awareness, I'm looking at a slightly mass kind of audience, but again focused on the TG that I'm trying to sell a particular product to. So then I would be working with influencers that are reaching out to that TG. So for instance, if I am launching a product for young people, so I would be looking at a lot of lifestyle influencers, etc. If I am looking at launching a photography-centric product, I would be looking at photographers and other different type of influencers. We have our own set of photography influencers that we work with throughout the year also, because they are the people who really are our voices. They are the evangelists that tell the world about us. And on the other hand, there's the whole tech community that we work with. So that is really helping us in driving trust and preference for the brand, because they are a part of the customer decision journey. So the customer would probably get awareness from, probably a post that a Siddharth Malhotra does, hypothetically. But then they would probably go and read about it at an NDTV, see what probably an Arun Prabhudesai or Technical Guruji or a Rajiv Makhni is saying, and then probably go back to the store to buy the product. So we try to get maximum touch points in this customer decision journey using the influencer ecosystem.
I wanted to actually talk a little bit more about sort of negative reviews when they come in and then the brand takes a hit. What's the best way to navigate these kind of challenges? And I would also like to hear Mehek's perspective. Yours, after you, Geet.
Okay. So I think, thankfully, we have never faced this, that we have got so much negativity for something that we have to go counter with that. But I think what we need to do is have enough positivity around in the market so that some of these negative voices can be drowned out. So, something negative, while I was sitting here, I was going through a review that was not very positive for one of the devices that came out. Okay. Now, and that view has close to about 10,000 views already. Now, you might be concerned, 10,000 views, let me take the review down, let me reach out to the person. Well, look at the larger scheme of things. I've worked with influencers that have driven about 100 million views in total, right? Or even more than that. Now, if that has happened, then that is very minuscule. That kind of drowns it out automatically. And as said earlier also, this is a monster that eats its own children. So I think it will, most probably, if the voices are not loud enough, they will get drowned out by the others.
So I think negative, positive, and neutral all are equally important. The negative part comes into play because I also want to understand who are my real critics, right? And I'm sure there are a bunch of people, there are trolls and all of that, but we have a lot of social listening tools. We have a lot of ways to understand people who actually care about us will be our first critics. So one of the examples I'd like to share is from an ASUS point of view only, where people would have ranted about us, about some of our features, but they are the ones because of whom we actually introduced a webcam in our gaming devices. We got in bigger arrow keys on our keyboards because there was a whole discussion on social media that we are not being able to game properly. There is an issue with your devices. There's an issue with your motherboard. So honestly, those critics are giving us feedback, okay? And that feedback is something that's helping me. So a lot of brands can talk about income statements, they can talk about sales, they can talk about numbers, but this is the most important part of it. And if you don't take in the negative feedback, there is something you're not doing right. I think that's my perspective on this bit.
I think that's very well put, as a matter of fact, because when you're looking at a brand, you're not looking at one product. You're looking at a slightly longer horizon. That, okay, you know, today, if I get feedback on the product, if I'm continuously addressing the feedback, then those critics themselves become your evangelists.
When a backlash happens, these guys help you. That's the time when they will vouch for you. You know, while there be controversies and fire starters sit everywhere. They work with us, they're in brands, they are across people, but these are the people who actually will also give a real picture. So that's the whole part, that jargon of advocacy comes in play here. So yeah.
ये भी समझना जरूरी है थोड़ा सा कि कौन कर रहा है वो, जिसको कैंपेन नहीं मिला वो कर रहा है क्या? मतलब ऐसे भी लोग होते हैं.
I think it also depends on the magnanimity. I'm sorry, how big is the problem, and how sensitive and emotional it is. Because at times, if it is completely untrue, some things maybe we have to give a rebuttal, we have to put a statement, but never try to, if it has really happened, okay, galti ho gaya, usko cover up nahi karna. That should be the, you know, the most important thing. For any brand, it is important, never try to cover up a goof up.
Apeksha, has your experience been similar or different?
No, I don't think we have come across any such situation, but as she rightly mentioned, I'm not able to remember, but there has been a case where the company recently, the brand did come out and, you know, sort of justifying the statement that had been made. So that should not be done, definitely. But there will be a lot of critics. So you don't have to respond to each and every, you know, critic that comes your way. Take the feedback. If it's a product-centric feedback, improvise on it. Or if it's a marketing-related feedback, maybe improvise the channels that you are using to market your product or the way you are trying to put it out there. So, you know, take it positively, I would say that.
Okay. Of course, there are challenges and there are ways to navigate them. So I want to just continue to get your point of view, Apeksha. Do you think tools like social listening tools, data analytics, these kind of things helpful to comms professionals to navigate this current ecosystem?
Definitely. So I'll tell you what, being a tech company, we use data analytics, AI, a lot of it, to find out, you know, how we can better serve our customers, what data points we should focus on, what kind of products we should focus on, and what kind of comms narrative we should build with respect to those products. Not just this in terms of finding out fraud detection and all, these tools are very much handy. So in our day-to-day work, for example, I'll give an example of the maternity health product that recently was launched with an insurer. Before that, term insurance for women, homemakers. We never had any intel that, you know, why should such a product be in the market? It was with the help of these tools that we found out that people are keen on having, you know, addressing these checkpoints. And that's how we ended up working with the insurer, you know, telling them that this is the intel we are getting because we have a larger customer base. And yeah, that's why we launched these products. So definitely we'd work with these tools on a day-to-day basis a lot. And specifically about comms, definitely we use these data points to plan and strategize our comms around it. So yeah.
Your perspectives, Mehak, Gitaj?
I think they are important to get a perspective on what's really happening in the broader scheme of things. And they can be one of the things that you're looking at while planning. But I don't think they are the only thing that is being used.
Want to get your perspective on this, Anandita, since you are from Ernst & Young, more of a advisory sort of a role. Do you think that, or have brands come to you for advice on what kind of tools, what have you recommended? How do you see them playing out in this scenario?
Yes, why not? In fact, personally, I feel, and of course, we also discuss at work, if something can make your life simple, why waste that additional time where you can spend that time into more strategic work? doing a lot of market survey, if I can get it through any tool, or if my work becomes simpler, why not? Definitely. I think we should leverage it, the positive side of it.
Any thoughts on crisis? I know, Geeta, before this, the panel, when we were speaking on this in the other room, you mentioned how important the role of crisis comms is. Do you want to share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, we've had our fair share of crisis. We've got a lot of love from all kinds of authorities. And it is about understanding, as I mentioned earlier, it's about responding and not reacting. Go back to the basics. And then really see, do I really want to go and get involved in this myself? And as you rightly mentioned, that we do not want to sideline things. We don't want to cover things up. We want to address the thing head on, see what is the right voice, what is the right medium to get our voices out. It could be a third person really talking about us and really getting us out of the situation. And for us, what has worked a lot of times is really monitoring things and seeing, okay, do I really need to get into this, or this too shall pass? Because again, as I mentioned earlier, 3 alphabets out of 4 in news is new, right? If you don't feed it, you're not going to get anything new out of it. So, you should not be the person who's really fueling the fire that's already out there. You should respond to the fire if it is required, and you should really be figuring out how to ensure that you come out of this in a better position that you got into it. But I think the most important thing is the prep behind it. It doesn't matter if I'm not speaking out. What am I doing in the background? Am I prepared for when it hits the ceiling? Right? Is my legal team prepared to handle if something happens? We recently had a fairly, gnarly crisis in Udaipur. And there, at that time, the only thing we did not respond to it at all. But we knew that if something comes, my government affairs team knows that, okay, who are the people that they need to reach out to ensure that nothing more comes out of somebody else's mouth. My legal team is prepared if police comes over and has to respond. My manager on ground knows how and what to say to the people who ever come there. So all the prep is important, but that doesn't mean that you need to go into war every single time you are hit with crisis.
In earlier days, we used to say we have to be crisis ready. We have to have a crisis manual ready. But yeah, when it happens, many things you really need to customize and the real time control what you say. But mostly, as we say in today's digital age, it's about ABCD. It's appearance, behavior, communication, and the digital impression. So these 4 things have to be taken care of and be very vigilant to tackle a crisis.
I think the escalation matrix is very important. How it really, if it is escalating, who are the people who are getting involved? What is their role when something like this happens? So I think that kind of laying out of rules is important internally. But you obviously can't have scenarios mapped out throughout.
It's very case specific, I think. And sometimes if it's a crisis communication, the answer is not in just going to the public or putting things out on Twitter. Maybe it's just responding to the regulatory bodies. Maybe it's just responding to the spokes that are really concerned with that particular matter. Yeah, even internal comms, right? So it's very case specific. You can't really have a plan set in advance for all sorts of crisis communication, I would say.
So I think they've covered a communication perspective. I feel like it's absolutely very critical. But the point is, it's just not when the crisis happens, but because there is a sentiment floating. Are you working back end as business to take care? It could be after sales service. It could be something relating to your products. It could be something in terms of how you're dealing with the end consumer. Those things take time. It can take 8 months. It can take 10 months. It can take a year. But the whole idea is that we will speak when it matters and when we are ready. So one part is communicating, and of course, we need to communicate, we need to tell people. Brands also can't be absolutely shut today, because then, there are questions from everywhere. People come in and talk about the fact that, okay, they're not solving it. They're not solving for us. So that's the reason why they're avoiding the problem. But the aspect is, then the reality is that businesses need to work back end. And that's where analytics, social listening, and all of these aspects come in. So yeah, that's.
It's part of a very robust business continuity plan.
Of
That
course,
has to
yes,
be.
yeah. Last question, just for the way forward, because we are pretty much out of time, but like the previous panel, 30 seconds for everyone. Do you think it's time for brands to actually come together and start maybe working on some sort of an ethical charter with regard to AI and the usage of it? And is such an expectation even realistic in today's world? Start with you, Anandita.
Yes, of course, that has to be done. Ethics has to be everywhere. I mean, it has to be maintained everywhere. And especially companies, they are coming up with development and deployment of, ethical charter where the AI is put into proper use, especially for marketing purpose and talent acquisition, like, the initiatives like EDMA or AMS for marketing and talent acquisition. These are very, very important. There are many tools where for the protection of the data. So it is definitely very important to see the competitors. There should be a healthy competition, as we always say, but ethics has to be there.
Absolutely. Ethics plays a very big role, and especially if you're a brand where you're monitored by so many regulators at the same time, ethics has to be very important, but it's too soon to, predict when this would happen, when the move would happen, if brands would come together. But eventually, I think that, we are on the right.
Be a natural evolution of things.
Yeah. And we should push for it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree to that. It's a child that's just born. Let it kind of grow a little bit before we put it in school, right? So I think it'll take some time. Let it understand the world, and let us understand it also a little bit better.
Yeah, I think they've beautifully covered everything, so we're good, yeah.
Thank you, everyone. I also liked the way everyone, sort of bypassed the question on whether this is a realistic expectation, but that's comms people for you. Nevertheless, I think everyone today goes away from here with a little bit more insight about how to manage the digital landscape and a little bit less panic, thanks to all the insight shared by our panelists. Thank you, everyone.